Hi, Dr. Dolly. This is Dave calling you from California. Thank you for all that you do. I'm getting ready to finish residency here in a couple months, and we are planning on moving to the Midwest for a new position. Against better advice, we purchased a home early on in medical school and justified it by the fact that my wife's home business really couldn't be run out of a rented space. We're now in that similar position where we are purchasing another home in our new location. However, it's very generous, the arbitrage that we are gaining. And so the question now with this market is what we should do with the equity from our previous home. Really, we have enough that we could buy our new place outright, but this is likely not going to be our forever home. Any advice that you could give us about this would be very appreciated. Again, thank you for all that you do.
All right, Dave. Again, our theme today is rich people problems. I love it. This is so you're in a very wonderful position of having disposable cash, and you're wondering whether you should be taking that cash now that you get as a profit from the sale of your first house to put into your second house and buy it outright, or should you invest it? Generally, I would be, I'm generally of the mind that have less debt and try to pay off your primary residence. But honestly, when you in this situation where you could buy a house in cash or finance the house and actually invest it, I think I would go the other way, because the problem when people make the decision of invest versus pay off debt, they're usually talking about everyday expenses, the extra money I have left over. Should I put that towards my debt or invest it? And in that case, behavior doesn't work out very well. Most of the time, people actually end up spending the money instead of actually investing it. So, but in your case, you're going to get a windfall. The money is going to be there in front of you. Sound like you're going to make the right decision and not spend it all. If you can invest it, you'll come out ahead in this game, because right now the retirement. The interest rates on housing, on mortgages are headed up, but they're still kind of towards the bottom. It's going to go probably a lot higher. And you could probably maybe not make money off this money in the short term. I would dollar cost average it into a stock market, into a brokerage account. However, but in the long term, you will most likely come out ahead if you invest it now. What do you think?
I don't know. There's no right answer here. Right? This is the classic question: is debt versus invest.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to take the opposite position to be devil's advocate, right?
Okay.
I paid off my mortgage. We paid off our mortgage in 2017. It's been 5 years. I haven't made a mortgage payment. I haven't made a rent payment in 5 years. It's pretty nice.
That sounds nice.
That was our biggest monthly expense back when we had a mortgage. Not having that has given me the freedom, whether it's psychological or not, but the freedom to make different decisions with both my career, such as dropping night shifts, which happened about the same time, cutting back on shifts, which I have done since, taking business risks with the white coat investor. So keep in mind that just because the numbers show if you can borrow at 3 or 4 or 5% and earn at 8 or 9 or 10%, doesn't necessarily encompass the entire story. There's more to it than that. So I would not feel bad one bit. I mean, when I look at my financial goals, one of my goals was to pay off a house. And if your goal is to live in a paid off house and you've got enough money to just buy the house, that's not a bad thing to do with your money, but it depends on what your other goals are, right? I mean, how much leverage risk do you need to run in your life in order to reach your other goals? If 95% of your net worth is in this house, then you might need to take some additional leverage risk, and have a leveraged house so that you have some money to invest and have something besides the house. But if you've got $8 million of investments and you're talking about buying an $800,000 house, well, maybe I'll just pay cash for it and simplify your life. So I think we don't have enough information to really give good advice to this particular questioner.
think you're right. I mean, so it depends. Like if you're early on in your career, if you, I'm not sure if they said, I think med school, they bought the house, right? So they're probably still pretty early on in their careers. If they're going to be earning good income and, at least for the next 5 to 10 years, you could probably take on some leverage risk and be okay. But if you're at the end and, and you already have a lot of assets and like Jim said, you're already a multimillionaire, then you might as well buy it with cash. But yeah, you're right. I think it depends on what stage of life you're at. And of course, and then comes back to all the questions that we answer, right? It depends on what you want. It depends on what your priorities are. But if you're at the wealth building stage, and early in your career, it might work out for you to leverage this. Especially, I don't know, it just seems to me that the housing market is way overinflated right now. Again, this is a complete speculation. I have no idea what housing prices are going to do, but 2 years from now. But it does seem to me that it might be a little overpriced at the moment.
Sure feels frothy around here, I tell you what. But
Yeah.
Salt Lake's been, I think, the number 2 market the last year in the country. So it's pretty wild around here with housing. But
Right.
I mean, here's the deal, right? I don't mind people taking leverage risk. Maybe it makes sense to take more leverage risk and less market risk. I don't have a problem with that. But I want people to do it consciously, to do it deliberately, and to say, well, I'm going to take on this much leverage risk. I think that's reasonably safe for me in order to invest, and I think I can beat that, right? Because it's not guaranteed. You want something that's risk-free. Paying off a mortgage or not having a mortgage in the first place is a very risk-free investment, right? You're basically you're earning at whatever mortgages be right now. For example, if you get a mortgage at 5% right now or whatever they're at, that's essentially what that home equity is earning is 5%. That's not a terrible return, risk-free. So that's not necessarily a bad thing to do. But there's a guy by the name of Thomas something. It slips my mind right now, but he's written a series of books called The Value of Debt. And if you're really seriously considering taking on significant leverage on purpose in your life, I highly recommend you read 1 or 2 of his books. But his recommendation is if you can get good, long-term, non-callable debt, that you only take out about 15 to 35% of your assets in debt. So if you've got, a $500,000 home and a $500,000 in retirement accounts and $500,000 in a taxable account and $500,000 worth of real estate, he would say the amount of debt you ought to have is somewhere between $300,000 and $700,000. And the truth is, most doctors have already got more than that. So taking on more than that, you really got to wonder if you're not over leveraged in your life. So just try to do it consciously and deliberately, and don't take on more risk than you need to take on to reach your goals. If you want your questions answered by the White Coat Investor, record your question at whitecoatinvestor.com/YQA or click the link in the description.
The hosts of the White Coat Investor podcast are not licensed accountants, attorneys, or financial advisors. This podcast is free entertainment and information only. It should not be considered professional or personalized financial advice. You should consult the appropriate professional for specific advice relating to your situation.